Hi, welcome to our daily encounter once again. Today we're in 2 Kings chapter 4. We're going to be looking at verses 38 through 44. And this is a story where Elijah and the sons of the prophet find themselves in a famine in the land of Gilgal. And Elisha tells his servant, put on a large pot and boil stew for the sons of the prophet. So he goes out into the field to get herbs, but what he ends up finding is this wild vine with gourds, these wild gourds. So he came back, slices them up, puts them in the stew, and then he feeds them to the people. And as they eat it, they say, "Oh, man of God, there is death in the pot." And they were unable to eat it. And so Elisha gets this meal and he throws it into the pot and it becomes edible. But then this other story comes. It seems a little bit unrelated, but I think as we look at the spiritual significance of these things, I think we'll see that they actually tie together quite nicely. Where you have this man coming up and giving Elisha bread. He gives him 20 loaves of barley, fresh ears of grain, and he gives them to Elisha, and Elisha says, "Give it to them that they may eat," and it ends up feeding 100 men. And of course this closely relates to Jesus' miracle where he fed the 5,000. And so Elisha was able to feed them with just a little bit of bread. Now, looking back at this story, what we want to do is look at the spiritual application that we can draw from it. I think as we look at this story, we can find basically three stages of the spiritual life. And we're going to look at those here in a moment. But the first point I want to make is this idea of a famine. There was a famine in the land of Gilgal. And we can relate to this, even though maybe where we're living right now we may not be experiencing a physical famine. But spiritually speaking, we are all in a famine. Because as we look at this world around us, I think we have to conclude that this world is a famine. The psalmist recognized this in Psalm 63 and verse 1, where he says, "O God, you are my God. I shall seek you earnestly. My soul thirsts for you, my flesh yearns for you, in a dry and weary land where there is no water." Clearly, the psalmist here is talking about things spiritual. He notices and recognizes the fact that this world is a dry and weary land, and only God could satisfy the thirst within. And we'll talk about that more in a moment. We could also look at Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes in chapter 2. He tried a lot of things in connection to this world to satisfy himself, but really didn't pan out. He tried wine, he tried building houses, planting vineyards, making gardens, buying herds of animals. He collected silver and gold, hired male and female singers, had many concubines, did all that his heart desired, but at the end he concluded it was all vanity and striving for wind. And I think as we look at ourselves, anyone who's at least spiritually sensitive recognizes the fact that no matter how much we try to accumulate, no matter how much we try to enjoy the things around us, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, they cannot truly satisfy it. It just leaves us thirsty. And so as we live in this world, we find ourselves in a famine. But now that we've talked about that, now let's get into the stages of the spiritual life. Because a person is going to respond to being in a famine in basically three different ways. When we recognize that this world is a famine, we will respond in basically three ways. One, we'll take after the servant here in the story. We'll go out, maybe seeking something good like herbs, but at the end, we just end up finding wild gourds. These wild gourds were probably a type of fruit that bore the resemblance of a cucumber. But it was very poisonous. You could eat a little bit and it wouldn't kill you, but if you ate a lot, you would die. And so he gathers these wild gourds not knowing what they are, and he puts it into the stew and gives that for them to eat. And a lot of times as we go out into the world, we have this inner longing, and so we go into the world seeking things that will satisfy us. And what we find is that they are really just wild gourds. Um, Maybe we go after entertainment, maybe we seek after success, money, possessions. These are all gourds. And what we find is that when we seek after these things, it's not enough just to have a little bit of them, but we want more and more and more until eventually they can actually produce death within us. So we gather up these things and we put that into our pot of life, as it were, and try to live off of that. And I think, again, when all is said and done, we just have to recognize that there's nothing but death in the pot. And so that's the first thing we might do. We might try to seek satisfaction in this world. The second thing we might do is try to add a little bit of Christ in the pot. Elisha comes and he puts a little bit of meal into the pot, and that made it edible, made it to where they could eat it. And I think this meal symbolizes Jesus Christ. In John chapter 6, Jesus speaks of himself as bread. He says that he's the bread that comes out of heaven. And a lot of times what we do is we take this bread, we take Jesus, and we add him to this pot full of gourds, and we try to draw nourishment, sustenance, satisfaction through both the world, the things of the world, but then also Christ. So what we do is we accumulate all this stuff that we think will make us happy. We entertain ourselves. We do all these things that we think will satisfy, but then because those don't satisfy us, we'll add in church. We'll add in a little bit of Bible reading, maybe a little bit of prayer. But it's all really just to make us feel better, and to give us a warm, fuzzy feeling on the inside, and not out of full dedication to the Lord. And so we have a mixture. Just as this pot had a mixture of the gourds and the meal, so our lives has a mixture of worldliness, but then also the element of spirituality. And what we want to get to is to the third stage, the third way that we can respond to this famine that we're in. And this relates to this man that came and brought the 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain in his sack. And that was what really truly satisfied these 100 men. Without the gourds, without the pot, without all the bad stuff, just the pure bread. Not the meal mixed with the gourds, just the meal, just the barley, just the fresh ears of grain. And we want to get to that point in our spiritual life where all we want is Christ. To where we no longer seek after the things of this world for our satisfaction, to make us happy, to try to fill the empty spot, but only Christ. Christ and only Christ. To where he becomes our full satisfaction, our full desire, our heart's desire. To be able to speak in the way that the psalmist did in Psalm 61, where it says, "You're my God, I seek you earnestly." I don't seek the things of this world. I don't seek prestige and success and all the things that the world seeks after. I just want Christ. I want the pure bread. And when we do that, what we find is that our inner being just becomes filled with life. We become filled with sustenance. We become filled with satisfaction. Now we have the one thing that this world cannot provide, and that is Jesus Christ himself. And so, as we think about this story, let's all try to kind of take inventory of our spiritual lives. What are we really seeking in this life? Are we solely basing our satisfaction on the world? Do we have a mixed life of both the world and Christ? Or do we seek Christ with our whole heart, with our whole being? This takes a lot of introspection, a lot of being true to ourselves, being true within. But it is very, very necessary so that we can then begin the process of making Christ our all in all. Well, thank you for listening to the video today. I hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.